Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at Mendoza College of Business at the University of Notre Dame. We are celebrating the close of Women's History Month, and we are excited to hear from our talented and brilliant panelists and to hear it from her series. So my name is Maria Stutzman Marquez, and I serve as the Director of Admissions across the graduate management programs here at Mendoza. And my role today is to moderate a panel discussion with our students as they speak into their unique perspectives on leadership, gender equity, gender parity, and their experience within their respective graduate business school programs. So before we kick off the panel, I would be remiss not to share in great appreciation for the efforts of our Mendoza team who curated the content and really brought this brilliant panel together. So thank you to J.R. Nemelka, who is on the back end handling all of the questions that are coming through. He serves as a portfolio marketing manager. We have a number of wonderful admissions directors who you have either likely worked with through the admissions process or you are currently working with them. We thank our program academic directors and our associate deans in support of our dialogue today. So at the University of Notre Dame and Mendoza College of Business, we value diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so while we say that, and we believe in saying that is very important, it's not enough. We need to consistently demonstrate our commitment as we continue to evolve as a college and a broader community. So in that vein, I wanted to take a moment to honor and acknowledge the traditional homelands of the indigenous peoples, and particularly the Pokagon Potawatomi, whose land has been the location for the University of Notre Dame since 1842. And they have stewarded these lands for thousands of years and continue to do so. So as we again close the Women's History Month, we honor the celebration and enliven its intention to foster gender equity and parity across sectors, industries, communities, and our broader global and geopolitical landscapes. And not only this month, right, but always. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome and thank our esteemed student panelists. So thank you so much for being here today. I know that you have a lot going on with just completing finals, and then now you're hopping into a whole new set of coursework. So we really appreciate your presence with us today. So if you wouldn't mind, let me just take a moment to introduce yourself. We'd love to hear more about your program, your class year, and where did you move to South Bend from, and tell us a little bit about your cohort. And we can get started with Ellie.
Hi, so my name is Ellie Muldoon. I'm in the Master's of Science of Accountancy program. I'm doing the tax track with a concentration in data analytics. This is the first year that they've offered the data analytics concentration, so that was very exciting. Just like, moving forward in business, analytics becomes more and more important. So that was a really great opportunity that Notre Dame offered this year. I'm moving from Florida. I went to the University of Florida for my undergraduate degree and grew up a lifelong Notre Dame fan. So very excited to be here. My cohort has been really great. It was a little bit smaller, I think, than in past years because of COVID and everything, which was honestly great for me because I got really close to a lot of my classmates and my teachers and just everyone in the program has been a really tight-knit community, which was really amazing for me. I think you might be muted.
Yes, I am. That's the first time today. I always have to go for at least once in a day. Thank you, Ellie. Charlotte, what about for you?
Hi, my name is Charlotte Harris, and I'm in the Master of Nonprofit Administration program. I'm originally from Cincinnati, but I've spent the last few years in Boston after I completed my undergraduate degree at Wellesley College and had been doing executive search consulting for nonprofits and higher ed institutions. My program, there's 30 of us this year, and I think many people have different intentions for what they would like to use the skills, the tools that we learn in this program. Some of my classmates are interested in starting their own nonprofit. Some are interested in doing more social impact consulting, and some are interested in doing fundraising or serving in different types of operational or program roles within different nonprofits. So very excited to share my experiences today. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, wonderful. What about for you, Mary Claire?
Hi everyone, I'm Mary Claire Leonard. I'm a part of the first year class of the 2-year MBA program. We're currently around 100 to 120 students. Don't know the exact number, but it's a nice big group with people in all different sorts of disciplines through marketing. I'm personally in corporate finance. We have a investments track, strategy, which typically leads to consulting, are just a few of the concentrations that business analytics that Mendoza offers. Plenty of great opportunities there. I technically didn't move that much because I was here. I'm doing the engineering MBA program, so I came straight out of undergrad. I've been in South Bend the last 3 years, but prior to that, I'm from the south side of Chicago. Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you. And Hishwan.
Hi, my name is Heshuan Zhang. I'm originally from China. I got my undergrad in Peking University, and then I got my PhD from University of Virginia. After graduate from the PhD program, I decided to move from academia to the industry. So I pursued this 1-year Master's in Business Analytics. So currently I'm at the 1-year MSBA program, and we have about 65 students, and it is actually doubled compared to the last year. And also a lot of our classmates are from diverse background, including a lot of international students from China, India, and Europe, and with a lot of a balance between male and female students, and background including not only students from science and mathematics background, but also from liberal arts like history and sociology and art or things like that. So this is a great program that train us in those technical skills and also applying those to business cases. So I would love to share a little more about my experience in this program. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Isabella.
Yes, hi, my name is Isabella, and I'm doing the Master of Science in Management. I completed my undergrad in Notre Dame as well, and I recently graduated. And prior to that, I lived a little bit in El Paso, Texas, and prior to that in Mexico. So I've been moving a lot, but going to South Bend has definitely been one of the larger transitions that I've done. And I'm pursuing this master's program mostly because I wanted a shift in my career focus, which has definitely helped with the courses and the career development that this program offers. And I'm excited to tell you more about it.
Oh, thank you. Well, good. Well, it's wonderful to have each of you here. Thank you so much just for sharing a little bit more about yourself. And, you know, as we step into this next topic, really about leadership, right? And how we challenge the status quo as leaders. And so as a homage to International Women's Day, the Fearless Girl statue on Wall Street in New York City was now surrounded by broken glass, right? Which was the broken glass of that glass ceiling that we've heard about. And so given statistics about women in top C-suite leadership roles, which is about 8% at Fortune 500 companies, this has also doubled in the last few years, which is good. Not great that it's 8%, but that there is change. So it's really clear that boards, executive teams, and organizations are responsible for fostering change. So as leaders, navigating organizational issues and concerns regarding gender are commonplace, right? And we hope that they become more commonplace and that they're, you know, that these issues are addressed. But you're in a place right now where you are a leader, you're continuing to be a leader, you are on that path. So we'd love to hear more about, you know, the moment in time when, you know, you realized and recognized that you were on this leadership journey, and perhaps could you share with us a moment where you found yourself challenging the status quo? And so, Isabella, we ended with you. I'd like to start with you first in answering that question.
Of course. I think the first time that I started to consider that I had a capacity, or that I could believe in myself in becoming a leader, was eventually, I think it was around high school. I went to a relatively small high school, and it was single gender high school. So I think that definitely pushed me towards just working my way through clubs and leading leadership positions. However, the transition to college was a little bit more different, because there was a lot more students, and I was still trying to figure out where I wanted my career focus to be in. So I focused my leadership skills in extracurricular activities, and that is where I really found that if I was passionate about something, I shouldn't be afraid to go forward and take the role or take an initiative to do something about it, because I could be successful in it. And then eventually throughout grad school, I've been able to have internships where I've been placed in a role where I'm given the responsibility of other people's tasks in a team. And that just has showed me that if other people can trust the skills and capabilities that I have, there is no reason why I shouldn't be able to trust in those skills that I have myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the affirmation, like knowing that you're headed in that direction, and then given the positive feedback and the leadership, somebody advocating for you in the same way. Yeah.
Yes.
Heshwan, what about for you?
I have some similar experience, said Isabella said, and someone actually support me and help me in this process to become a leader. And as an Asian girl, I think a lot of our education tell us you should be more docile and also receive tasks or work, do hard work, but it's not a culture that cultivate your leadership position. But when I start to work as a project lead and research analyst at the Weldon Cooper Center, when I was in graduate school at UVA, I meet my boss, Tom, and he's also a professor in our department. And he actually asked me to not only be a task taker and to work on those research and analytics tasks, but also as a project lead and to work with the client directly and ask some of our employees to report to me. And he trusts me that I can actually lead this project from beginning to the end. And I also with our team, I overcome a lot of difficulties in the process, including for example, one of our project, we need to survey about 500 health professionals and students. And in the beginning of the pilot survey, we only have 12% response rate. And I only got about 12 or less than 20 responses. And then at that time, my team is actually very pessimistic about whether we can finish this project. But I start to take the leadership, that I start to navigate or leverage the network of our client and start to contact those different organizations that can actually help us to distribute our survey to more people. And finally, we got to 550 responses for this project. And this is a project I'm very proud of. And it is also a project that addressing the social mission, the diversity and health equity within the health education field. And I just feel through this project, I feel this is what I can do as a leader for the project. I can actually push those things, hard things happen, and I can get things done. And that's the moment I feel I'm a leader now. And in the future, I'm confident to taking on those different challenges and tasks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I hear in that that initiative that you took and the work that you're doing is in health equity. So very much challenging the status quo just in terms of the work there. Thank you. And Ellie, what about for you?
Yeah, so for me, I came from a really small high school as well. And then my undergrad is really, really big. It was 30,000 undergrad students. So it was a little overwhelming for me. And so I kind of just was a little hesitant to, I think, get involved in leadership positions. But finally, once I started to, after some friends encouraged me to join a program that a lot of my friends were involved in, I finally did, and I took on a lower role. And throughout the experience, it just became very clear that my direct superior was kind of just had gotten the position from his friends, and he was not taking a lot of initiative. So I just started taking on some of that responsibility, and the overall director of the entire program saw that and decided to promote me and make me a co-director with that guy. So it was just really nice to have that validation like we've been talking about. But it never would have happened if I hadn't just like taken that first leap of faith. So I think that that's really the most important thing to do, and not be afraid to take on more responsibility and ruffle some feathers maybe of, you know, like that guy, I don't think loved the fact that he had to work with me after that point, but it was, you know, great for me. And then I ended up continuing on with that organization for the rest of my time at the University of Florida. So it was really nice.
Yeah, and talk about super impact with building out one of the biggest rallies for the entire school. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what about for you, Charlotte?
Yeah, thanks for this question. And I think back to, you know, growing up, I think I had been labeled as a leader for a really long time, and being in different positions with organizations. However, I think when I think about where I've really challenged the status quo, wasn't necessarily in positions where I held power, but was maybe willing to speak truth to power in certain ways, and not really be okay with some of the policies or things. And so I think back to high school, there had been some sort of announcement or threat about like banning yoga pants, and that's such a sexist dress code. And there was just like a number of ways that at my public high school they were trying to put forward these sexist policies. And I just remember just like, all right, well, who's going to say something? I'll say something. We can get people to take this down. I mean, so, you know, I got a bunch of people. We just wore yoga pants every day and wore you know, they changed the policy, walked to our principal's office and said, yeah, I mean, these are the reasons why. I mean, you're not, unless you're going to start putting in ways that you're going to teach our boys to be better, I don't see why I can't wear my athletic clothes to school. And I think that kind of mindset of, okay, if you speak up, if you're willing to come in and stand your own ground, then that kind of challenging the status quo has carried with me. Even, you know, I had a few more issues or incidents with this particular principal, but even getting to a place like Wellesley College, which is very much centered around women in leadership positions, there were still times that we needed to push administration and faculty to have more, to have some more intersectionality and really be thinking of how we could support students in other ways. And so, yeah, I'm glad I really learned at a young age that speak up, they only hold power if you let them. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a great example of like kind of what Hishan said about bringing people together to accomplish a specific goal, right? And I think it's what each of you have said and spoken about too. And so Mary Claire, like, would love to hear more about your leadership journey as well.
Yes, I'd have to echo a little bit about what most of our other panelists have said, that their first experience back in high school. My first experience that I really realized I was challenging that status quo would be in my senior year of high school. I was in a computer science class of 10 people, 9 of which were males. And that was my first, once I realized it, obviously it was pretty obvious when you walk in. At first I was a little bit nervous, recognized this was my first kind of opportunity and experience where I would be the only female in the room. And obviously didn't let it stop me, because I ended up studying computer science and engineering in college. So really using that opportunity to understand that I could be the only one in the room, and I could let it stop me, or I found joy in the topic, and I was really interested in not let some challenge like that stop my passion and where it was, and took that to to college with me, where I joined the Society of Women Engineers my freshman year. And in my freshman year, for the following 2 years throughout my undergrad, was elected to the recruitment director position, where I was mainly tasked with bringing more women into, not only into our club, but sending out letters when they were admitted, encouraging them to come to Notre Dame and to join our community of supportive women in engineering and other male-dominated space. And that was such an incredible experience for me, that really rooted from that first time being the only one in the room.
Yeah, wow. And so when you think about being like the only one in the room, right? We've all had moments like that. And so the question is, and for Mary Claire, you're a part of probably the largest program here on campus at Mendoza with the 2-year MBA. And I know that the gender parity isn't exactly, it's not 50-50 right now. But what I would ask you is, like, how does graduate management education really help to elevate women across all sectors and industries, and what are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. I've thought a lot about this throughout this last year, from the various speakers that have come and talked specifically to our Women in Business Club. And I'll talk about a common theme that they've shared with us, but it is something that the program, I know, is working towards gender parity. And I had recently been elected to a women in business leadership position for next year. And that's something that our leadership team is also very passionate about assisting with. And in getting a graduate management education, you are giving yourself the opportunity to be going for those higher level jobs, and which obviously on a personal level is important and incredible that you're empowering yourself to do that. But I think I would argue even more importantly is having women in those positions opens a door for women down the line, not just in the fact that there's been a woman that's done it before, so it's not going to be a question, would this would be the first woman kind of trying to break that barrier. But a common theme we've heard from the women that have come back and spoken with us is that they didn't have women mentors, because the positions that they were going for, that they're in now, they were the first. And how unfortunate it was that all their mentors were males and didn't have, that they were obviously helpful to them and helped bring them to where they were, but couldn't relate on certain positions and certain just life experience that women go through, and how they really empowered us in saying, you're lucky that you have people like that, us to speak with, and it's important that you do the same and keep working to challenge the norm so that you could be the same source, and that we'll have even more sources for the next generation of women.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like having a seat, right? Like having access now, and then also having like the mentors and the support and the advocates. Because what I heard from many is that, many of the men are allies, right? Who are advocating and promoting and encouraging. And it's like, what would it look like? And, if we had more women doing the same thing, right? So excellent, thank you. And I know for each of the respective programs, like for some programs like the MSBA and also the MSM, there is gender parity, I think, and for Charlotte, you with the MNA, there might even be more women in the program. So it varies. But for the largest program at Mendoza, we still have some work to do there. And so I'm skipping around here a little bit. This question is definitely aligned with our topic today, but a little bit different from what Mary Claire was speaking to. But Charlotte, how has the program equipped you for facing, kind of the diversity in art every day? And how has it enabled you to fully express yourself as a professional, in regard to forging your own path?
Great question, thank you. And just in case you came on late, I'm in the Master of Nonprofit Administration program, and I think having a program that is talking about gender, race, and diversity in this way is critical. Thinking about who we're going to be serving in the nonprofit sector, and being able to have had an experience thinking about these types of topics and engaging with other types of people. I think for me, there's a couple of things that have really equipped me to be a better professional. I think the first is there's been a lot of room for our own personal growth and unpacking and unlearning our own sort of place where we are on this kind of DEI journey. And I know a number of our professors in terms of our essays and reflection questions have really pushed me to think about, although I'm an Asian woman, but how do I better show up for Black women? How do I better show up for the LGBTQ community? And where do I hold a lot of privilege and where do I not? And so I think the first thing is being able to think about for yourself, where do I have my own sort of learning to do and own reflection, and so I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is coming from a place that was a lot more politically homogenous and like a lot more of like I think a more like-minded place, coming to a place like Notre Dame where there is a lot of difference in backgrounds and politics has made me even more, I think, reflective in where my values are and why I think about those things. Because if you're willing to engage with people who have different viewpoints, you have to be able to think about, why do I care about these things? Why am I passionate about these things? Why is this true to me? And so I think it's given me an opportunity, A, to learn new perspectives, but B, stand firmly in my own sort of values and where I want to go. And I think that humility and that wanting to listen and not wanting to be a part of, canceling other people, that cancel culture, but still having some sort of accountability will make me a better professional. And I'm happy to kind of grow with that within an academic space versus having to grow for the first time and encounter that in a work environment or a place where there's maybe some higher stakes. And I'm really thankful for something like I've been able to identify areas where I can continue to learn and grow. And so I think the curriculum and those interpersonal relationships has helped shaped my professional as I kind of move forward.
Yeah, and I'm hearing like how much faculty play a part in that, and just even in the journey that we're like collectively on here at Mendoza, and having these conversations and not subscribing to dismissing one another and really listening. I think it's an important part, and I think it goes back to kind of the values of the community here as well. And so I think Ellie, I would love to hear more from you also about what leadership skills you've been able to build during your time here, and like how you plan to use those and bringing them into the business world. And I think, to kind of follow up with what Charlotte said, because these questions are very similar, but they're also very different. And you're also in a different program, so I wonder how that contributes.
Yeah, so for me, I think being at Mendoza has been really helpful. Obviously in this year, being able to be in person has given us a lot of unique opportunities that I think people that are in other programs across the country that might be online wouldn't have to deal with, because obviously it's a lot of extra wrenches thrown in with getting COVID and having to work with group partners and just working around people's schedules with being like some people being online and some people not, has definitely been challenging, but also I think really rewarding. Of the future of business is becoming more and more digital. So I think that it's been a great opportunity and Mendoza has done a really great job of helping us along the way, of like giving us the help we need, but still letting us be independent and having to figure it out for ourselves, of like working with each other and doing all that, but having, faculty and support there for any like issues that may arise. For me being in the MSA, it is a lot of group work. Because accounting in general just typically leads more to group work. So I think learning to navigate with just different diverse people, there are a lot of international students, there are a lot of, even just like different cultural backgrounds. A lot of us came from different religions, different undergrad, different backgrounds in general. And I think just learning to navigate that and, being like understanding of people's issues that they have at this time of like not wanting to meet up in person or wanting to, and just having to like navigate that in all my different classes has been the biggest growing experience for me. Obviously there are like programs like the Women in Business and like their class councils and different, like the different cohort councils. I think if you want like a more structured leadership role, but I think that the biggest leadership things that I have learned have been just from faculty and my fellow classmates, of just learning to navigate this time of obviously very unprecedented like learning styles, and but it's been really rewarding in being able to work with all these different people and see everyone kind of come together rather than like fall apart. I think has been a really, really nice and rewarding aspect.
Yeah, you bring up like such a huge learning that I think we're all walking away with, especially those who are in graduate management education, right? Because you're living the case. So, you know, in 10 years from now, you know, you will have a lot of, well, I think all of us will learn a ton from this experience here. And so Hishwan, you know, you are in a program that is very, in the industry, it's like to what Mary Claire said, it's like very male dominated, right? But in the program itself, like there is a lot of gender parity. So like what has been your experience in, you know, providing your input, getting feedback, and also feeling like valued and heard within your cohort?
Oh yeah, thank you so much for the question. So currently I'm at the Masters in Business Analytics program, and our program is relatively like equal in terms of male and female students, and also with students from diverse background. And I want to echo with Allie's point about the project or teamworking projects, and for most of our classes, and we will need to finish our final project and within a team, and within like those teams we will sometimes like kind of work with different people or different students. We're not only just working with the same students for all of the classes. And so that gives us an opportunity to actually get to know more like people from different background, gender or religion, or like even like a country of origin. And then I think as a female student, I feel like I can actually take up a leadership role in those group projects. And maybe like I previously have some project management like experience. So for the capstone project we're going to finish, like we're going to work with a real company and then get their data and working as a analytics consultant to help them solve a real problem. And so for this is a very big project we're going to finish before graduation. And for this project, and 5 of the students work on one company, and I just elect as the project manager. So a lot of the like female students and male students, they can actually compete for that project manager role, and show that, oh, this is what I want to bring. And also a lot of our female students actually taking up and stand up and say like, I want to be the leadership role, and I want to work as like a bridge between the students and also the client. And I think this is also like our faculty members and are really encouraging us to speak up in the class, and they hear about our feedback, and to actually value our voice during the class. So I think that's like this program in the past year actually teach me how to actually work with people from different background, and how to work on those different project and group project together. And another thing like I feel I learned a lot is that this idea about grow good in business, and in the Mendoza's like this idea behind their like the whole program. And I feel like for when we bring this in our mind, or just remember this in mind, and then bring this to the real business world. And a lot of the research have already shown that companies with more diverse background and with more like a female leadership will actually outperform those companies with like a less diverse and fewer women leaders. And so this is already proof, like a lot of like a consulting company like McKinsey already published those research. And this will actually help us to make our argument that diversity and health, like those equity, is not just something that we talk about for like a social justice, but it's also will bring real value to the business. And I think that is some like a talking point for us to talk with this C-suite leader in the future, that say like talk with them that if you see some like inequality or less diverse work environment, you can talk with them and show their evidence. That's like our training in business analytics, show them data that how diversity and gender equity can bring the value to their business. Yeah, so that's what I learned.
Absolutely. I mean, talk about like the biggest takeaway, right? And we're seeing that across, like, and if you look at the geopolitical spectrum right now, and through COVID, and you think about the leadership that has done quite well through COVID, primarily have been women leaders, and so it's really inspiring. Thank you for that. And Isabella, tell us more about, so the MSM is also a program that there's a lot of gender parity within that program, and so you have, I'm making some assumptions about having a ton of male allies, and how and when do we bring men into this conversation around being support systems and advocates and accomplices, right? And really moving the needle forward and getting more women on boards and more women in the C-suite. Yeah, what are your thoughts and what's been your experience?
There we go. I was muted. I think one of the key things that I've learned is to learn how to communicate, from maybe not just from in the friend group, but as far as like male allies are concerned as well. I learned how to communicate, and I guess from the male perspective to the female perspective, learn how to like listen, not just communicate, but listen, because all women have skills and the capacity to be a leader, but for some subconscious reason we don't speak up, or some of us won't speak up, and whatever we say, or there's some things that we say in the manner that we say it, that's the key to why we're not stepping up, or the skills are noticeable there by how we say it, in what way we say it. And I think that's the key to just bridging this gap that we have, is to learning how to listen, and not just talk thoroughly, but actually listen to the meaning behind what we have to say. And as far as my program is concerned, I had the note at the tip of my tongue and it vanished, but
It happens.
like Mary Claire was saying about the mentorship ability, is something I've learned extremely throughout these semesters I've been in the program, that through that way of like listening to what other people have to say, regardless whether they are female or male, it's the key I found out to be able to trust myself more, and then find out about the skills and interests that I have, and also from the other side, figuring out how they can help me become a better version of myself, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, and so that whole idea of that community of mutual advancement, and I've heard in all of these stories about the community and how it's upholding each other. And I think I wanted to take a little bit of a pause before we get into some of our final questions, and then hopefully take some questions from all of you. I see a couple of you out there who are here, who have just recently committed to joining us here at Mendoza, so it's nice to see you. At least your name's coming through. But I'd love to hear, this is kind of like ad hoc, like in listening to each other, off the theme that Isabella brings up here, like what are some connection points? Like what are some similarities that you heard? What would you like to bounce off of? Because I know we've gone through like question by question for each of you, but I'm sure there's some things that you wanted to add along the way. So please feel free to unmute and jump right in.
Yeah, I would love to add onto that last question about, what advice I would give our male allies. And I know they're out there and can feel a little bit nervous about it. And I think what I would say is I think once you see where there are women and your colleagues who are being steamrolled or talked over or not, to it just takes maybe you to just say, actually, I think Isabella said that, and just amplify their voice and just recognize where you can really uplift your women classmates or your marginalized classmates, and or also knowing when it's time to share the mic and kind of step out of the way and give them some space to step in and be there, because I think sometimes my some of my classmates have said, oh, well, so wouldn't someone just speak up, right? And it's just been maybe years and years of being talked over. And I think once you notice it, you can't not unsee it. So I just really ask you to, once you notice it, to help us out there.
Thank you.
I think another thing going off of that would just be like, I think sometimes rather than like asking a question and like trying to see it from a female perspective, people will just assume that they don't know or understand or like have had a similar situation. So I think just not being afraid to like respectfully, obviously, but like just ask like, hey, like, how can I help? Or like, why did that happen? Rather than just being like, oh, like that wasn't because you were a woman, or oh, that wasn't because of what, because that is like the most frustrating response in like the world is like, oh, that wasn't because of that. And you're like, well, you've never experienced that. So, you know, just maybe be like, oh, why did you feel that way? Like, why did you, or why did I come across that way? That wasn't my intention. Because I think that sometimes it can be maybe a misunderstanding and a miscommunication. But if that's the way that it comes across or it makes a person feel, then it is still having a negative outcome. So I think just to be, you know, very straightforward and being like, most people will want to sit there and explain it to you and want to like make it right. No one wants to have a bad working relationship with anyone else. So I think just, you know, finding that place of comfort and respect of working together.
Yeah.
And I think on an individual level, something that most of us have, or all of us have said throughout in some response that we've given, is talking about some way that we took a challenge that we had and used it to empower ourselves, and found our strength within ourselves in a challenge that we face. So I would just encourage all of you, as you hopefully join us here at Mendoza or wherever you continue your paths, just to look at those challenges on the other side of the face and say, how can I grow from this? Where can I continue to grow, as each of us have talked about in our paths, a defining moment for us.
I just would like to echo with every panelist, and I really like the idea about listening. And I feel like as a female student or woman, I listen to a lot of people talking, and especially when I work with a lot of male in a working place, and I just feel like I'm the a person who is going to listen to a lot of their voice. And in the beginning, I feel it's hesitate to actually voice my ideas, and I don't know whether my ideas will be valued. And so a lot of the time I can, when I observe, I also have some reflexive observation for myself and other female co-workers. I just feel like a lot of the females, when they start talking about something, and they always start with something like give some softeners or some, I would like to say something, but I'm like apology first and then say something second. And instead of that, a lot of the male students or male leaders, and they would directly say something and say they're very confirmed on their ideas are correct, and you should listen to that. This is meaningful. So I think sometimes after this reflection, I feel like a lot of the female leaders, we can also learn from the male students, that how they think and how they talk, and do not apologize before talking, and just be more affirmative about your opinion and how your opinion will be valued. And it is actually very valuable. And also when there are some chances also for our male allies, and just encourage your female co-workers and students to actually voice their ideas, and to actually what Charlotte said, amplify their voice. I think that will be very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. And so I know that we're at like the 45-minute mark now. And so we're happy to take questions if you want to pop them in the Q&A, and we'll keep on taking a look at those. I do have a final question for everybody. And Isabella, I'm going to start with you. This question is really about, it's going to be a choose your adventure. So you can, you can pick one or the other. But this one is, the one option you have is to really think back to a time when you had, like, you're setting, your first foot on campus, and what kind of advice would you give yourself today? What would you give her back then? Sorry, that makes no sense, but you know what I mean. Like, reflect back, and from your point of view from today, what kind of advice would you give yourself as you were starting? So that's one question for all of you to think about. The option question is, what advice would you give to other women as they prepare for further education, whether it's graduate management education or beyond, in another respective field, and really as they prepare for their leadership journey. So as I'm looking and kind of taking a look to see what other questions are coming through, would love to hear from each of you, and we'll start with Isabella.
Yes, I think going along with the similar to the listen point of view, I would tell my younger self to speak up. I think it has to do with personality as well. I am more reserved on the shyer side of the spectrum, but as I progressed through my undergraduate career and eventually got to grad school, I started to notice the impact that speaking up about my opinion, or if I don't agree or agree with another opinion, can have on the effectiveness or success rates of whatever I'm working on, or the type of conversation or argument that I'm being part of. And I think it's one of the key elements that I've learned in the past semesters. But I would definitely, I think my younger self would have definitely appreciated the value that speaking up has, because I know I was told multiple times to not be afraid to speak up, but if I would have known the value that can have on other people's lives, on my life, on my self-confidence, as well as others, that would have been made a bigger impact back then.
That's such a beautiful sentiment too, to think about how, like, the absence of your voice may not have had, like, this kind of waterfall effect with others. So yeah, that's really wonderful about the impact. Thank you. And Ellie, what about for you?
Yeah, for me, I think I just was always very loud and opinionated. That's just kind of always been my personality. But I think growing up where I grew up, partially, I think it is like a little bit of a Southern culture, but also just like my family background. I was told a lot of the times, like, oh, like, that's rude, like, like, don't ruffle any feathers, just, like, mind your P's and Q's. And I think that going back, if I could give myself any advice, is just to say, like, a lot of people who were saying that were from, it was a little antiquated, or it was people who didn't want to deal with, a young girl being loud and having an opinion. So I think I would just say, don't be afraid and don't be discouraged by people who are, because there are always going to be people who are kind of looking to, like, knock you down, or, just not, even if it's just not wanting to deal with what you're saying. So I think, yeah, and I would give that advice to any girls going into any kind of male dominated field or anything. Just, don't be discouraged by people saying, oh, that's not how, like, a lady should act, or, like, things like that are so outdated like that, just to kind of say, be true to yourself, and, like, obviously don't be rude and don't be, but, just to, if I think it's important to say, then it should be said.
Yeah, I like those themes that are running together. We have a question here that is about amplifying each other, and it's, does Notre Dame provide opportunities for women to learn from other alumnae, other women in business who lead in a strong, uniquely feminine way? Who would like to take that one?
I'll take it if that's okay. This is close to me, as I mentioned that I'm on leadership for women in business, and my role is the VP of External Relations. So my predecessor in this role did a great job this year of bringing in some incredible women for us to hear from and either be a part of the Notre Dame community or having some relationship, whether it be alumni or otherwise. And I hope to continue those opportunities that we've had this year. But top of mind, this year we spoke with Muffet Mcgraw, who I think is one of the biggest champions for leading in her own uniquely strong feminine way, leading our women's basketball team to numerous national championships and successful seasons. And beyond that, we spoke with the COO of roadside assistance from Allstate recently as well in her journey throughout progressing so high in such a large corporation as a woman and the challenges that she's faced in that way. So yes, I would say Notre Dame has provided some great opportunities, even just through our specific Women in Business Club that I hope to continue. And beyond that, we have great connections with our alumni that they want to come back and be that source for the next generation of us.
Awesome. And I just saw Ellie. Thank you, Mary Claire.
I would also add to that, even like the faculty, I would say, has like a great opportunity of like throughout all the programs, like across the board of, I know for the MSA, there are specific like female, they like worked in industry and are now coming back to teach. And that has been a really great opportunity that I've really, really enjoyed. And just even some of the management classes I've taken have like there's such a diverse group of faculty, and there's so many strong women that have chosen to come back and teach at Notre Dame. And I think that is a really great opportunity for everyone to like just take advantage of, just to get to, they're all small enough programs that you can really get to know your professors and connect with them and have like a growing relationship with them.
Yeah, thank you. Good. Any last words of advice that you would want to give our participants? And I'm Charlotte, please.
Yeah, something that I would love to tell to young professionals, young women, that I think when you're surrounded by a lot of high achieving people, or when you are on social media all the time and you are on LinkedIn and you just see people having success after success after success, it can feel like that journey is just very, very linear, that they just went from being 21 or 22 years old to CEO, when in reality, that's not the case. And I think I remember when I was a senior in college thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get from having no idea right now to being this successful person. And so I always would love to I would always wish I had heard that people are facing challenges, and that, that progress is not just a one track thing. And if I don't hit this particular milestone, that's not going to get me there. And so I'll just say, there's going to be hard, but you will have people there to support you. And I think that all of the failures and challenges that I've had, I think have actually set me up for to be here where I am now, and to be more successful. And there are probably a lot more people who are in solidarity with being nervous if they are enough, and you certainly are enough and capable, and you have the people that you need to get you through. So that's what I would say.
Oh, wonderful.
I would like to maybe add a few of my, what I've learned the most in the past year is that for a person who are going to pursue business analytics, and it's not only important to actually learn about the techniques and about the programming languages and about R, Python, SQL, Tableau, but also it's important to distill insights and coming up with a strategic thinking. I think this is a mindset, and I will encourage not only female students but also male students to actually think outside of it's just don't focus too much on the model itself, but focus more on the general picture, how those model can bring value to the business. And when you actually can think in a strategic way, I think that's the starting point. You become a leader. And because only the leaders will think the problems from a bigger picture, not just the specific models. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to have all of you here. I say this maybe not as often because you haven't heard this, but I feel like I say this a lot. I'm new to Mendoza. I've been here for 6 months. And so hearing from all of you and your stories and your passion and your commitment to excellence and to really, following the values in the model of growing the good in business is really wonderful to hear. And I wish you all the very, very best in your own success through this year and beyond. For those who are still on the line with us, I want to thank you for joining us today as we head out on behalf of the University of Notre Dame and Mendoza College of Business. We wish you and all of your relations the very best in health and safety, as I know that we're all awaiting vaccinations and hopefully an end to this pandemic. So thank you for joining us today. And again, to our panelists, thank you for your brilliance today. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure our attendees felt the same. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everybody.